Hello students, welcome back. In the last two sessions, we started with the first chapter, that is typical configuration of computer system. Yes, and we saw what is a computer system, some of the terminologies related to the computer system. Then we started with the main concept, that is motherboard. What is a motherboard? A characteristics of motherboard. Then we studied types of motherboard. Yes, so in this session, let us study what is a general structure of a motherboard. Okay, now see the diagram carefully. So you can see here two bridges. One is a north bridge and another is south bridge. North bridge is also called as north chipset. South bridge is also called as south chipset. These are the two chips which are mounted on the core logic of the motherboard. Okay, now we will see the functionality of these two. See, north bridge is connected to CPU, memory bus, AGP, PCI slots. Yes, means what? The work of north bridge is to control the high speed component of the computer. Okay, then coming to the south bridge controls what? Slower speed components of the computer. South bridge is connected to PCI buses, input output ports. Okay, PCI bus which controls the graphic controllers, LPC buses, that is flash, ROM or BIOS. Yes, we already know RAM is a fastest, that is a primary memory. ROM is that is also primary only, but that is slower compared to the RAM. Yes, so north bridge is managing the RAM and south bridge is managing the ROM. Okay, now we will see in depth of this. North bridge and south bridge are nothing but these are the two chips which are mounted on the logic chipset of the core logic chipset of the motherboard on our computer systems. Okay, so as I said, a north bridge or a north chipset is responsible for controlling high speed component of the computer such as CPU, memory, other chipset, and controlling the speed of the bus. So what is this bus? Bus is nothing but one of the component in the computer system which carries data from one component of the computer to another component of the computer. So carrying data has to be faster. Yes, so that can be managed by this north bridge. Carrying in the sense you are moving data to and from here and there. Okay, so when you are moving the data, you should make use of the speed of the CPU properly. So how to make use of the speed of the CPU properly and the RAM speed properly, that can be done by north bridge. So basically north bridge or north chipset is responsible for controlling of high speed components like CPU, RAM, bus, and moving data to and forth between the components of the computer system, making use of the speed of RAM and CPU properly. Yes, okay. Next, see south bridge. South bridge is also similar to the north bridge only, but its work is to control the slower devices such as sound card, net card, hard disk. Okay, next. Main concept is components of motherboard. Let's see which are the components. Processor, that is CPU, BIOS, CMOS, slots, disk controllers, input output ports and interfaces, bus. Okay, remember here we are studying components of motherboard, and this question can be asked in your examination. List the components of motherboard. So you need to write processor, BIOS, CMOS, slots, disk controllers, input output ports and interfaces, and bus. Okay, now we will see one by one in detail what are these. Okay, we have studied in the last year a processor. Processor is nothing but CPU, that is central processing unit. It is nothing but a brain of the computer system. Yes, why this is a brain of the computer system? Because every processing of the whichever information you give to the computer will be done by this central processing unit, and this mainly consists of three parts, and those are ALU, CU registers. ALU is arithmetic and logic unit, control unit and registers. So what is the work of ALU? As the name suggests, arithmetic and logic unit. It performs arithmetic in the sense addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, these kind of operations, and logic in the sense and or not. So those all operations can be performed by this arithmetic and logic unit. Okay. Next is control unit. Control unit is responsible for organizing and processing of the data and instructions. Means what? So you are giving input 2 plus 2. Who does this processing? Arithmetic unit. Yes. So controlling means in the sense whatever input you are giving, 2 and 2 input you are giving, that data has to be brought from your input devices to the arithmetic and logic unit. Yes, so bringing that data there and giving output on the monitor. So controlling this transfer of data and instructions will be done by this control unit. Next is registers. So registers are nothing but they are simply a temporary storage areas for holding your data and instructions which are currently being executed. Right now you are performing 2 plus 2, that 2 and 2 and that plus addition operation will be stored in some of the temporary memory, that is nothing but registers. Okay. So next component is BIOS. So question can be asked, expand BIOS. Okay, expand in the sense you need to write the full form. Full form is basic input output system. Okay, then what is this BIOS? This BIOS is nothing but a small chip which is mounted on the motherboard, which holds a set of instructions to load the hardware settings required for like keyboard, monitors or other disk drives. Okay, then this BIOS runs when the computer is switched on. Basically what it does, so usually computers are in off state unless you on the system. So as soon as you switch on the computer system, what will happen? Your operating system will be loaded into the memory. Okay, so this BIOS include the bootstrap loader to load your operating system onto the memory. That has to be brought into the memory first. Yes, to make any other softwares to work, operating system has to be brought into the memory. Okay, so this work will be done by the BIOS, and BIOS also contains instructions and programs to check whether other hardware devices connected to the computer system are working properly or no. Yes, so what it does, so you on the system, when you on the system, it does the checking of the devices. So you have connected keyboard to the computer system, whether the keyboard is working properly or not, or is there any problem with the keyboard. You have connected a mouse to the computer system, work is now working properly or not, is there any problem with that mouse? If any problem is there, then it will give a notification. Okay, this is not working properly, like that. So this testing is called as post, that is power on self test. Okay, so what you need to remember here, BIOS is nothing but a small chip on the motherboard that holds a set of instructions to load the hardware settings. Why we need? Because to check whether those devices are working properly or no. Yes, and it also loads the operating system on the memory. It does the post test, that is whether the hardware devices you have attached to the computer system are working properly, functioning properly or no. Okay, this is the work of BIOS. Now moving on to the next component, that is CMOS. This is also very important. Question can be asked, expand CMOS. So CMOS is complementary metal oxide semiconductor. It is complementary metal oxide semiconductor. So what is this CMOS? This CMOS is also nothing but one of the memory chip only. So why this is used? This is used to store some of the system parameters such as date and time. Okay, so what happens, you do lab programs daily. Okay, so usually you come on the Friday. So Friday you come at 3 o'clock, up to 5 o'clock you perform your lab programs. After that what we do, we off all the systems, right? Okay, when we off all the systems around 5 o'clock we off the systems. So next day when you when we come to the college, that will be around at 10 o'clock. So at 10 o'clock, if I on the computer system, so what time it will show me? We have switched off the computer yesterday at 5 o'clock. So when I come next day morning at 10 o'clock, when I on the system, it will show me the time as 10 o'clock only, right? It is not going to show me the time as 5 o'clock. Yes. So who is showing me the correct time? I have offered the system, but it is still showing me the correct time. Who is doing that work? That work is nothing but CMOS chipset. Okay, so basically this chipset will be kept powered on. So we have to keep this power on. Why? If we off the computer system, everything is offered, means the time will not show its real data. Yes, so these CMOS and BIOS will be kept on with one battery, that is lithium ion battery. CMOS and BIOS chipsets are kept on using one of the battery, that is lithium ion battery, which is located in some place of the motherboard. Okay, so remember here CMOS is used to store date, time and other system setup parameters of the computer system. Okay, now moving on to the slots. Slot question can be asked, what is slot, for 1 mark. Okay, a slot is nothing but an opening space in a computer where we can insert a printed circuit board. As we know, a normal slot meaning is it is simply a opening. So on those slots, what we can do, we can insert a circuit board, printed circuit board. And these slots are often called as expansion slots. Why these are called as expansion slot? Not only to insert the printed circuit board, it can be used to connect your other hardware devices to your computer also. Now let us see some of the types of the slots. So first one is ISA, that is industry standard architecture. Here also one more question can be asked, that is expand ISA, and it was asked in one of the annual examination question paper. Okay, so what you need to write, ISA stands for industry standard architecture, and this slot is used to connect modem and input devices to your computer system. Okay, this was the earliest slot which is used to connect modem in the sense modulators and demodulators, and some input devices to the computer system. Next slot is PCI, that is peripheral component interconnect. So this slot is used to connect the graphics accelerator cards, sound cards, internal modems or SCSI cards. So just remember what is the work of slot. So slots we are using to connect the some of external peripherals to the computer system. So this PCI in the sense peripheral component interconnect, this slot is used to connect graphical accelerator cards, sound cards, internal modems or SCSI cards. These are all things are required. Sound is required, right? We have a built-in sounds for a computer system. So all these things are useful. To connect all these things, we have to have a slot called as PCI slot, and these are much faster compared to ISA cards. Okay, we saw here two slots, that is ISA and PCI. So now moving on to the next slot, that is AGP. So AGP, as the name suggests, is accelerated graphics port, and this slot is an advanced port designed for video cards and 3D accelerators. So where on the computer system you play the videos, yes, you play the games, everything, you see the 3D dimension pictures and all, right? How you see them? So you should have something called as AGP, and for that AGP you have to connect your video cards and 3D accelerators. Yes, so the AGP slot is an advanced port designed for video cards and 3D accelerators to connect them onto your computer system. Okay, next is RAM slot. So we already know RAM is nothing but a memory. Yes, so what type of memory it is? It is a primary memory which stores programs and instructions that are currently being executed by CPU. Yes, that RAM is nothing but a memory which stores the instructions and the data which are currently being executed by our CPU. Yes, so RAM is a hardware, that is a memory. We have to insert that memory onto the computer system. On the motherboard, that can be done through RAM slots. Okay, and the RAM is measured in terms of bytes. So we know nowadays we are taking mobile phones, everybody are using the mobile phone. How we measure how much is the RAM? We say how much is the RAM? Yeah, 2 GB RAM, 3 GB RAM. Yes, that is nothing but GB in the sense gigabytes. Yes, and there are two types of RAM slots are there. First one is single line memory module and second one is double inline memory module. Two types of RAM slots are SIMM, that is single inline memory module, DIMM, that is dual inline memory module. Yes, question can be asked, what is a RAM slot, which are the types of RAM slot. Okay, types of RAM slots are SIMM, that is single line memory module, DIMM, that is dual inline memory module. Next slot is processor slot. So name suggests as processor slot. We are using this to insert a processor chip, which is the largest chip on the motherboard. So what is that processor chip? Which processor we are using? We are using i3, i5, i7. Yes, so these are the processors. To insert those processors onto the CPU on the motherboard, we are using a slot called as processor slot. So processor slot is used basically to insert a processor chip, which is the largest chip on the motherboard. Okay, next component of the motherboard is disk controller. So what is this disk controller? Disk controller is nothing but a circuit which enables the CPU to communicate with hard disk, floppy disk, or other kind of disk drives. Okay, so disk controller is nothing but it is one of the circuit which will allow the CPU to communicate with hard disk, floppy disk, or any other kind of disk drives. So why we need this hard disk, floppy disk? We already have a RAM memory, right? What are these hard disk, floppy disk? These are nothing but secondary memories. Yes, but we already have a primary memory called as RAM. Then why we need the secondary memory? Since the size of a RAM is very less, yes, we cannot store every data on the RAM, so we have to go for another option, that is a secondary memory. And if you want to connect these hard disk and floppy disk secondary memories to our computer system, we should first have controllers installed for these drives. Okay, that is nothing but disk controllers. So now we will see types of disk drives. That is, first one is hard disk controller. What is this hard disk controller? It is nothing but an interface which enables a computer to read and write information to hard disk drive. So we already why we need these hard disk drives. Why we need? Because we cannot store every data on RAM memory, that is the primary memory, so we have to go for secondary memories. Yes, so when you are going for secondary memory, and that is you want to attach hard disk, you want to insert hard disk to your computer system. Yes, so that time what we should have a controller for this, that is nothing but hard disk controller. So HDC is an interface which will allow the computer to read and write information to the hard disk drive. So read and write in the sense you want to store some data onto the hard disk, that is called as writing data on the hard disk. And if you want to retrieve, you want to view some data from the hard disk, that is called as reading data from the hard disk. And to do these work, we should have some interface called as hard disk controller installed on our system. Okay, so one of the first hard disk controller developed is IDE standard drive, and it is also called as ATA, that is advanced technology attachment. Okay, so moving on to the next. controller, that is floppy disk controller. Now how we have nowadays the hard disk controller, earlier days we had a floppy disk controller. Floppy disk is also one of the secondary memory which was used to store the data. Okay, so floppy disk controller is nothing but that is also an interface, okay, that directs the control and of reading and writing to the computer's floppy disk drive. Okay, so this controller is an interface which is used to read, in a sense view the data from a floppy disk and store or write the data onto the floppy disk drive. Okay, brief information of floppy disk. Floppy disk, now earlier days it was used to store the information, but nowadays we are not using the floppy disk. Why? Because floppy disk has a memory limitation. Okay, so the data which we were using storing on the floppy disk were in the form of MBs, but nowadays we have some other secondary devices such as pen drives and all. We can store in the form of GBs of data in the pen drives. So floppy disks have been vanished now, and the size was also bigger compared to these pen drives. Okay, so floppy disks have been vanished nowadays. We are not using them anymore, but still these are the two controllers for your studies, that is hard disk controller and floppy disk controller. So basically, what is a disk controller? It is nothing but a circuit which allows the CPU to communicate with hard disk, floppy disk and any other kinds of disk drives. Two types are there. One is hard disk controller, another is a floppy disk controller. Hard disk controller is an interface which will allow the computer to read and write information to the hard disk drives. Yes, so floppy disk controller is an interface which enables the computer to read and write information to the hard disk controller. So question can be asked here, what is disk controller? Explain the types of disk controllers for 3 marks. Okay, so next remaining we will see in the next session.